Now, Jessica is why we've got hope. You take really tough family experience and you turn it into action. And I know that that's what so many folks are doing in this room who are focusing on this challenge together. Listen, I got to just quickly tell you why I'm so honored to be here on behalf of Hillary Clinton and why I'm working so hard for the Secretary to be our next president. This and many other issues is why I'm working so hard. But listen, on this one, it really matters. I don't want to give you a long speech. I really much rather have a dialogue, but I just want to make a few comments to open things up. Listen, what are we politicians really good at? Talking. Listening to ourselves talk. So rarely listening to anybody else talk. So one day I'm sitting in my office, this is many months ago, when this campaign was just starting for the Secretary. And my phone rings, and my staff comes running in, and they say, you know, the Secretary Clinton wants to talk to you. Well, what's she want to talk to me for? I have no idea. I said, well, great, put her on. I've never spoken with her before. I pick up the phone, and I figure it's going to be another one of these many politicians that you've been seeing tramping through New Hampshire talking about how great they are. And she said, you know, Governor, I'm calling you because I've heard about the things that you're doing over there to fight opiate addiction, and something really strange has happened to me. She said, when I go to New Hampshire, when I go to Iowa, when I go to all these states around, something has changed dramatically since last time I went out as a candidate. I'm meeting moms, I'm meeting dads, I'm meeting brothers and sisters, I'm meeting neighbors and friends, and they're just telling me horrific stories. She said they're from all walks of life. They're rich and they're poor, and they're middle class. They're all colors. They're all parties. This disease seems to know no exceptions, and they're telling tragic, tragic stories about losing family members to opiate addiction. And I hear that you're doing some things in Vermont. Can you tell me what you're doing? And then she did something that I rarely known politicians to do. She just listened to me talk about all the great things that I'm doing, that we're doing together in Vermont. And for a while, I thought maybe she'd hung up the phone, you know, because usually politicians interrupt you so they can talk. And she just listened. And at the end of that conversation, I said, I'm happy to help in any way I can on this issue. 4 weeks later, she came out with a 5-point plan on opiate addiction that is exactly what I love about Hillary Clinton. She listened. She took it into that extraordinary brain of hers and basically came out with a policy on opiate addiction and alcohol addiction that, if implemented, will finally give us the help from the federal government that we need to finally take this battle on, this disease on, and treat it as a disease and not a crime. Now, what was her 5-point plan? It was actually mirrored on some of the things that she'd heard from me, and I'm sure some of the things that she heard from people much smarter than I am on this subject, because I am no expert. But the plan is smart. $10 billion. 5-point plan. First, criminal justice reform. What I said to Hillary is, listen, when I was having the same experience you're having in Vermont, and by the way, it's great to be over here in eastern Vermont today, but I said, you know, in western Vermont, when I go out and talk to folks, you know, I find that it's just, there are stories that just make you want to sit down and cry. And so I started asking folks. I went into treatment centers. I went into our prisons. I went in and talked to addicts all over the state. And they told me that we were doing almost everything wrong. So I said, well, where do we start? And addicts told me this, and I passed it on to the Secretary, and it's in her plan. She said, listen, what folks said to me is that when you're busted, when you've bottomed out, when the blue lights are flashing, that's the most likely chance that we have to move someone from denial to treatment. And I know I have alcoholism in my family, and we all know how much denial can come with that. But you can put that on steroids when it comes to opiates. And what we were doing in Vermont was the blue lights are flashing, we throw you in handcuffs, you haul you off. It takes 4 or 5 months to wind your way through the criminal justice system, and then we usually put you in jail. And by the time you get to the judge, you're back using, you're back abusing, and you've lost that window of opportunity. So instead, we put third-party assessors in every county in Vermont, and when you get busted, they come in and they determine, as experts, is this someone that will hurt you, Or is this someone that's more likely just to hurt themselves? And you all know, as family members, as community workers, as law enforcement, 99% of folks won't hurt you. They'll just hurt themselves. And we say to those folks in Vermont now, if you'll go into treatment, if you get into our hub and spoke program with all the wraparound services, we'll get you back into a productive life. You stick with us, we'll stick with you. You'll never see a judge, you'll never see a criminal record, and you'll never see a court. And it's working. We've saved $50 million in the last 3 years on putting folks in prison instead moving into treatment. And guess what? They've got hope, they've got a job, they've got life, and they're getting back with their families. So that's Hillary's first plan, criminal justice reform. Second, we said, we got lines for treatment. Now listen, I'll tell you this story because I'm from New Hampshire. I'm in New Hampshire, my dad's from Vermont, but his doctor's up in Hanover. When he got diagnosed with cancer, and he's since passed away, you know, they tell you now, this is a cancer that you might inherit for the kids and everybody else in the family wants to know, or this is a behavioral cancer. Well, they told him his was behavioral, that he'd smoked for years and years. He had cancer of the esophagus, and it was going to take his life, but they do everything they could for him, and we did. We did everything we could. Why is it that when my dad is diagnosed with cancer that's created from a behavior that we all know isn't very smart, smoking, that we say, we will do everything we can to keep you on this earth as long as we can, and you will not stand in line. But if you're an addict to opiates, we say, get in line. We might serve you sometime, usually sometime later. So Hillary's plan is build out treatment centers, give states like New Hampshire a 20/80 match in federal funds, get rid of the waiting lists, treat this like any other disease, stop the discrimination, line up, and let's make sure that there are not lines for treatment, but instead of having lines for treatment, we've got lines for folks saying there is hope for my future life and we're going to get to work in treatment. That makes good sense. That's plan 2, treatment for everyone. Federal government, 80/20 match, that's huge. So states like New Hampshire can get into the treatment business. Third, we have found that it's not right to let people die in the streets. So we've gotten rescue kits to everyone that'll take them. State police. I had the first state police force in America that had naloxone in every state cop in Vermont. Local police, sheriffs, firefighters, ambulance, and EMT. Everyone will take it. We've saved hundreds and hundreds of lives. I was just speaking with your police chief. They saved 33 lives right in this community in 2015 because they had rescue kits. Hillary says, 20/80 match, we'll get you the resources you need to be able to afford naloxone so that no addict dies in the streets any more than that we let you die from any other disease in the streets of America. Fourth, she says, let's make sure that we enhance, with federal help, the database so that we stop pill shopping across borders and doctor abuse where folks can go in and line up this stuff, FDA-approved OxyContin arrest, put it in their pockets and keep getting more of it with no questions asked. And fifth, she says, let's change the attitude about the disease. Let's get rid of the stigma and let's work together on prevention so that we can actually stop the flow in. And all I can say is I don't think there's a smarter, better plan in America, and it impresses me that she listens instead of talk. She brings people together to get tough things done. And with that zoo down there in Washington, D.C., I don't think we'll find a better candidate who can actually bring people together to get things done. I just want to close by saying this. Listen, we got to ask at some point, why are we in this mess? Why are we in this mess? What has changed in America? I was born and raised in Vermont. We didn't have heroin addiction in many numbers in Vermont. You did not have lots of heroin addicts in New Hampshire when I was a kid. So one thing that we refuse to talk about, which Hillary is very willing to take on, is the fact that we got ourselves in this mess. Listen, get this. There are 3 letters that can express my frustration. It's hard to find words to express my frustration, but 3 letters can express my frustration with where we are. And they are FDA. Think about it. When we approved OxyContin in America, the company that promotes it and makes it, Purdue, lied to doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers all over America and told them it was non-addictive, signed people up for this stuff. It's the first non-addictive painkiller you'll ever use. They pleaded guilty. They pleaded guilty to charges, 3 of their top execs, to lying to healthcare providers because they knew that wasn't true. They paid a $77 million fine the same year that they sold $11 billion worth of OxyContin. In 2010, we sold enough OxyContin in America to keep every adult high in America for a month. Those are just facts. In 2012, we sold enough OxyContin in America. 250 million prescriptions. How many folks do you think we have in America? That was a bottle for every single living American. At the same time that in 2015, Big Pharma spent $422,000 per congressperson lobbying Congress to get their way. And get this, a year ago, the FDA approved Zohydro. Zohydro is OxyContin on steroids. It's going to be our next big enemy. Their own advisory panel, 13 docs, voted 11-2 to the FDA, do not approve this one. They did it. This year, they voted to give OxyContin to kids. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. So we need a president who's got the guts to take this one on. It's Hillary. I ask you here in Eastern Vermont, give Hillary a shot. She'll get it done. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions you might have. Yes?
Well, since all this OxyContin is coming through the FDA, what you're really saying is the biggest pusher in the country is the FDA. And the President of the United States controls the FDA and can say no today if he wants to.
And that's exactly why I think that Hillary Clinton will appoint an FDA that isn't in the pocket of Big Pharma, but is in the pocket of the people of America. And that's the way it should be. And listen, here's a...
It's not about the FDA being in the pocket. It's about the President of the United States today.
Well, you know, we can argue about that. All I can tell you is that, in my view, I would argue that the entire Washington political establishment gives Big Pharma too much power, and that's why they spend $422,000 a congressperson to lobby him. But I got to say, I'm proud of President Obama. He's gone out and said $10 million to fight this disease this week. He's just put his secretary Vilsack in charge of bringing together rural communities to help solve rural problems. I think we're making some progress. What else is on your minds? Yes.
Hello. My name's Holly Sakala, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And I love the stuff that you're doing in Vermont.
Thanks.
With the Vermont Recovery Network. But I didn't hear that in the 5-point plan. What is Hillary's plan or your plan to support the peer recovery supports and protect the investment in treatment?
That's a great question. And first of all, thanks for all that you're doing and for your courage in speaking up. The beauty of Hillary's plan is that she really listened to what I and others said and said, listen, I'm not going to come up with a federal program that duplicates the good work that Vermont and New Hampshire and other states are doing. Instead, you send me your plan, and assuming that it's real and it's making progress, I'll send you 80 cents on the dollar for every concurrent program that you're funding. And that's our big problem as governors, whether it's Governor Hassan here in New Hampshire or me in Vermont, we're scraping pennies together to fight this battle. So what Hillary's saying is, states innovate, states get it right, those states that are making a difference will get 80 cents on the dollar federal match for all of the above, including prevention, which is what you're talking about. And that's what's been lacking from Washington, D.C. Me too. Absolutely. And what she's saying is that she will support 80/20, our recovery program. So it's a comprehensive program from A to Z, soup to nuts. And she gets that it's all part of a comprehensive answer that we've got to work on together. So it will not be a top-down from Washington, this is my plan, this is how you shall do it. She's saying, I'm seeing the incredible work states are doing, and some that aren't doing anything. I'm going to have a program where governors learn from other states, see what's working, and we'll match it 80/20 as soon as they have the program in place.
I mean, I understand, but our state is not investing $1 in peer recovery services. So that's really good, but for the person on the ground or the recovery community organization on the ground receiving no state funds and no federal dollars without a way to access that, I'm not seeing candidates that give the private community a way to help. So that's what my question continues to be as I go through this,
Right.
unaffiliated, undecided process and vet out candidates. I'm still not hearing the answers I need from my peer community.
What I would say to your peer community is you're just warming up on this one in New Hampshire, as you know. And I think it's impressive that Governor Hassan and others are pulling together a bipartisan group in the legislature to really take this one on. And, I do think that Vermont is ahead of you in many ways, particularly in the areas that you're talking about. But what Secretary Clinton is saying is, listen, it's got to be all five. It's got to be prevention, it's got to be treatment, it's got to be recovery. In other words, you can't just say we're going to take a slice of the pie. We need a comprehensive plan. States need to come up with it. If it's real, I will fund it 80/20. And these are the guidelines by which you have to hit, and recovery is a big part of it. And it would allow New Hampshire to have the resources to do what they should be doing. Which, let's be honest about this. This state, is tight on resources. You got no income tax, you got no sales tax. I recommend you adopt both. What else are you wondering? So listen, I just want to, yes.
Hi, my name is Richard. We don't know for sure that it's a disease. We think it's sin. This is a church. And we also think that we're looking for a candidate that doesn't want to kick God out of our country. And people should come to Jesus, not to drugs, for rest and peace.
Well, thank you for that, for your opinion. And I got to tell you, I don't think there's anyone in America who would say we don't need to tap everything that we can as we deal with this crisis. And, there are a lot of folks who, as you know, we have many church-based support groups, treatment programs. Churches have been an extraordinary resource for AA and Drugs, Alcohol Anonymous, all those programs. And, there's no question that they have a really important role to play. So, everyone's going to decide individually about their faith. But all I can tell you is there's no question that we need everybody involved in helping us to solve this problem. And you make a good point. What else are you wondering? So I understand you got another candidate. I'm not running for president. I just want you to know. This is my promise. I never will. But I do want to say, just as I close up, that New Hampshire is obviously an incredibly important state in terms of the presidential selection process. I can't remember in my lifetime having a Democratic candidate for president. I know you're not all Democrats, but on our side, that has more brain power, more experience, more compassion, more heart, and more willingness and capability to bring people together to solve problems than Hillary Clinton. So thanks for all that you're doing, and we'll keep on it. And you're for Ted Cruz? Except Ted Cruz. Okay, well, fair enough. I'm not here to argue with you, and I'm glad that you're here for Ted. But if you change your mind, vote for Hillary. Thank you so much for having me.